Hi everyone. In today's lesson we'll be looking at the plans and streetscapes of Pompeii and Herculaneum. So we'll be studying these cities in depth and getting a bit more understanding of what they were like. Pompeii had about 15 to 20,000 people. So it's a much smaller city than a city like Sydney, but it was still a great city at the time. Inland area, it covered about 160 hectares, and it was surrounded by a wall which had 11 watchtowers. Access to the city was through 8 arched gateways in the wall. Within these walls, Pompeii was divided into blocks intersected by straight, well-made streets paved with stones. And you can see this is a very good picture of the streets of Pompeii. You can see the stones that they had. There's a raised gutter and a walkway there. So you can see this is exactly the types of streets they had in Pompeii 2,000 years ago. Roads had gutters which carried away rainwater and waste. There were raised footpaths for pedestrians. Public fountains provided plenty of fresh water for residents and travellers. In this picture, we can see what one of the fountains looked like. Underground lead pipes carried water to some of the private houses. So some of the rich people actually had water coming into their homes, but the lead pipes was a problem. Lead pipes can cause infertility. And so, that's a problem that the ancient Romans probably didn't know about. They didn't realise the lead pipes were actually doing that. In this fountain, there were many fountains like this in Pompeii. And even if you go to Pompeii today, they still use these fountains, but they have like modern taps coming through. So a tourist can get water from a modern tap in the fountains. So it's quite amazing. There were many public buildings and amenities in Pompeii and Herculaneum. There were 3 public baths, an extensive exercise ground. There was the Palaastra, complete with a swimming pool. There was an amphitheatre and 2 other theatres. And in this picture, we can see the Forum with Mt Vesuvius in the background. The Forum was the centre of the city, and it's like the CBD in a modern city today. It had many important buildings located around it. So the centre of the Forum was like a football field. It was a large open area. Today, you can see the Forum is covered in grass. These are the ruins of Pompeii, so naturally there's just grass there. But in ancient times, the Forum would have been paved, and it was a large open area like a football field surrounded by the important buildings. It had law courts, banks, and even a marketplace. The Forum also had other public buildings, and this is actually a map of what the Forum looked like. So you can see you've got this very large area here, which would have been paved, and it's very similar to a football field. It's rectangular. And around here is important buildings, such as the ones I mentioned. And they also would have had temples as well. So some of these buildings were temples. And they also had public shrines. It was surrounded by other important buildings as well, such as the Eumachia and the Basilica. Herculaneum was a smaller city. It only had about 5,000 people. They're not sure exactly how many people it had, but they think it was about 5,000. It also had a wall around it, and it was located by the sea. And there's some famous villas that were built just outside of Herculaneum, such as the Villa of the Papyrus, which would have had views of the sea. And in this picture, we can see some of the ruins of Herculaneum. So these are the ruins of Herculaneum today, and we have modern buildings in the background. There were many beautiful buildings in Pompeii, in Herculaneum 2,000 years ago. Much of the city is still underground. In one of the previous slides, I showed you the Forum in Pompeii, but we don't actually know what the Forum in Herculaneum looked like because it hasn't been excavated yet. So a lot of the buildings in Herculaneum are still underground. The city is located about 7 kilometres from Mt Vesuvius. The 4 housing blocks excavated so far reveal straight and regular streets, paved and well drained. The main street, the Decuman Manus Maximus, is wide with well-constructed footpaths on both sides. There were some magnificent villas beyond the town overlooking the sea, and this is a picture of some of the ruins of the Villa of the Papyri, which was a very beautiful building which was just outside of Herculaneum. This building was already a very large, beautiful building, and it was already 250 years old at the time it got destroyed. It's called the Villa of the Papyri because of the papyrus scrolls that have been found inside. In ancient times, people wrote on papyrus. That was one of the materials they wrote on. And they had a lot of scrolls written on papyrus. This home had a very large collection of ancient scrolls. It had a huge library. And that's why it's got the name, the Villa of the Papyri. This is a replica of the Villa of the Papyri. It is part of the J. Paul Getty Museum in California. Now, J. Paul Getty was a billionaire in the 1970s, and he liked Herculaneum, and he built a museum in California. And this is actually a replica of the Villa of the Papyri, and it's based on Carl Weber's drawings. It's obviously beautiful and magnificent. You've got this beautiful pool in the middle, the gardens all surrounding it, and all these beautiful bronze statues as well. And then you've got the main sort of building over there. So that's just a glimpse of a modern day replica of the building. And in ancient times, it must have been a very beautiful building before it was destroyed. Here is a picture of what it's believed the Villa of the Papyri would have looked like. So you've got that courtyard area with a pond, then you've got the main buildings over here, and just look at the location. It is right next to the sea. And you can't sort of tell from the picture, but this building would have been about 250 metres long, and it was owned by one of the relatives of Julius Caesar. So this was a magnificent estate, a magnificent house that a rich, important person would have owned. And you can see it's right on the sea. It would have had magnificent views of the sea. And this is better than the houses that a lot of people live in today. Most people in Australia today don't have a house like that. So it's really extraordinary that they built something so beautiful and so large, and yet it was 2,000 years ago, and it was already 250 years old when Mt Vesuvius erupted and destroyed it. So this just gives us a clue of how magnificent the Romans were and how great their architecture was, that they could build things like this 250 years ago. And it did have an extensive library of papyrus scrolls. Most of those papyrus scrolls have not been deciphered. We haven't fully read them. They were burnt or damaged during the volcanic eruption, and so we need special technology to read what was on them. It is possible to do that, but it's very, very expensive. So we don't know what lost treasures might be in the Villa of the Papyri in terms of written treasures. There might be ancient writings, nobody's ever read before, ancient poets, ancient histories. There could be all sorts of wonderful writings that are part of the Villa of the Papyri that we don't have anymore. But this was just an introduction into these two great cities that were destroyed, and it gives us a glimpse of what the two great cities were like.